"Can I stay for the night?" The desperate black widow pleaded through the saloon window, her shivering daughter pressed against her rain-soaked skirts as thunder cracked overhead. "Stay. But you're not leaving after," replied the towering rancher, his steel-gray eyes holding secrets that could change everything. The frontier town sees only what they choose to see, a destitute woman destined for the potter's field, another casualty of the unforgiving West. They dismiss her educated speech as pretension, her dignified bearing as arrogance. She's expected to disappear by morning, forgotten like so many before her. But the wealthy cattleman recognizes something in her desperation that mirrors his own hidden torment. His recently deceased aunt's final will contains conditions that could transform both their lives forever, if they can survive what's coming. A family fortune hangs in the balance, along with enemies who will stop at nothing to claim it. Will one storm-swept night of sanctuary unlock the key to a legacy worth killing for, or destroy them both? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The wagon wheel cracked against the rocky trail with a sound like breaking bones. Evelyn Moreau gripped the reins tighter as her 7-year-old daughter Lila bounced against her side. The storm clouds overhead promised misery. They had been traveling for 3 days since fleeing the farm. The debt collectors would find nothing but empty rooms and broken dreams. Her husband's gambling debts had consumed everything they owned. Copper Ridge emerged from the Wyoming Territory landscape like a mirage. Wood buildings lined a single main street. Smoke rose from chimneys into the gray afternoon sky. People hurried between doorways as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Evelyn guided the wagon toward the general store. She pulled her sewing kit from beneath the seat. Perhaps someone needed mending work. A few coins would buy bread and a night's shelter. The store owner barely glanced up when she approached his counter. "We don't need any seamstress work." "I can mend anything. Shirts, dresses, leather goods." He shook his head without looking at her. "Nothing today." Outside, the rain began in earnest. Evelyn tried the blacksmith shop, then the bank, then a small restaurant. Each door closed before she could finish her offer. The townspeople's eyes held the same cold dismissal. Thunder crashed overhead. Lila pressed closer to her mother's skirts. Sheriff Morrison appeared beside their wagon as they prepared to leave. His badge caught the gray light. "You can't camp that broken-down wagon on our streets." "We're not camping. We're looking for work." "Territorial taxes on that wagon come to $8. You got $8? Evelyn's stomach dropped. They had 93 cents between them. "Sir, if you could give us until tomorrow morning." "Can't do that." The sheriff unhitched their old mare from the wagon traces. "Horse stays with me until you pay up." The wagon became useless without the horse. Their few possessions sat exposed to the gathering storm. Lila began to cry silently, the way she had learned since her father died. The rain turned violent. Water ran down the street in muddy rivers. Every building offered light and warmth except to them. Evelyn gathered their remaining belongings into 2 bundles. She took Lila's hand and ran toward the largest building on the street. The Thornton Saloon and Hotel rose 3 stories high with painted signs and glass windows. The proprietor met them at the door before they could enter. His clean apron and pressed shirt marked him as a successful businessman. "We don't serve your kind here. Please, just for the night. My daughter is cold. Find somewhere else." He stepped back and closed the door. Evelyn pressed her face against the window. Inside, men sat around tables with hot food and warm drinks. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace. She knocked on the glass. The proprietor returned with an angry expression. She could see him mouth the words but couldn't hear them through the storm. Lila's lips had turned blue. Her small body shook uncontrollably. "Mama, I'm so cold." "I know, baby. I know." Evelyn knocked harder on the window. The warm light inside seemed like another world, a world where children didn't freeze in the rain. "Please," she called through the glass. "Can I stay for the night?" The proprietor started to wave her away again. Then a figure rose from a corner table. The man stood taller than anyone else in the room. His broad shoulders and weathered hands marked him as someone accustomed to hard work, but his clothes were finer than a working man's wages could buy. He walked to the window and looked directly at Evelyn. His steel-gray eyes held an intensity that made her step back. He studied her face, then looked down at shivering Lila. The tall man turned to speak with the proprietor. Evelyn couldn't hear their conversation, but she saw the smaller man's expression change. He nodded reluctantly and stepped aside. The door opened. The tall man emerged into the storm without a coat. Rain immediately soaked his white shirt, but he didn't seem to notice. "Stay," he said. His voice carried absolute authority. "But you're not leaving after." Evelyn stared at him. The words made no sense. Stay but not leave? What did that mean? "I don't understand." "You will." He gestured toward the door. "Come inside, both of you." The warmth hit them like a physical force. The fire's heat reached across the room to embrace them. Lila stopped shaking for the first time in hours. The proprietor watched nervously as the tall man led them to a table near the fireplace. Other patrons stared openly. Some whispered to their companions. "Bring them hot food," the tall man told the proprietor, "and coffee for her, milk for the child. Mr. Thornton, I'm not sure this is wise. I didn't ask for your opinion." So this was Thornton. The name matched the hotel. Evelyn realized she sat across from one of the wealthiest men in the territory. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. Thornton studied her face again with those intense gray eyes. "You'll understand soon enough. What's your name?" "Evelyn Moreau. This is my daughter Lila." "Where are you headed, Evelyn Moreau?" "Anywhere we can find work." The food arrived quickly, hot beef stew and fresh bread. Lila ate like she hadn't seen food in days, which wasn't far from the truth. Thornton waited until they finished eating. Then he leaned forward across the table. "I have a proposition for you." The Thornton Ranch sprawled across the valley like a small kingdom. Evelyn counted at least 20 buildings from the wagon seat. Barns, stables, bunkhouses, and corrals stretched in all directions. The main house stood 3 stories tall with wraparound porches and tall windows. Caleb Thornton guided the wagon up the circular drive. He had said little during the hour-long journey from town. Lila had fallen asleep against Evelyn's shoulder, exhausted from their ordeal. "This is your home now," Thornton said as they stopped before the front steps. Evelyn stared at the grand entrance. "I still don't understand what you want from us." "Patience. You'll have your answers soon." A woman emerged from the house. Gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, kind eyes behind wire spectacles. Her dress was simple but well made. She moved with the confidence of someone who had run a household for decades. "Mrs. Garrett," Thornton said. "This is Evelyn Moreau and her daughter Lila." Mrs. Garrett smiled warmly. "Welcome to Thornton Ranch. You must be exhausted." She led them through rooms filled with fine furniture and oil paintings. The floors gleamed with polish. Crystal lamps cast warm light through glass shades. "Your rooms are upstairs," Mrs. Garrett said, "connected by a door so you can keep the child close." The bedrooms were larger than the entire cabin Evelyn had shared with her late husband. Thick rugs covered hardwood floors. The beds had carved wooden frames and quilted coverlets. Lila woke when they entered her room. Her eyes widened at the sight of a rocking horse in the corner. Books lined a small shelf by the window. "Is this really for me?" she whispered. "It is," Mrs. Garrett said. "Miss Cordelia insisted we keep it ready." "Who is Miss Cordelia?" Evelyn asked. Mrs. Garrett and Thornton exchanged a glance. "All will be explained shortly," he said. "Rest first. Wash. Change into clean clothes. Mrs. Garrett will provide what you need." The hot bath felt like heaven. Evelyn couldn't remember the last time she had soaked in warm water. The soap smelled of lavender. Mrs. Garrett had left a blue dress on the bed. It fit perfectly. Lila splashed happily in her own bath. Her laughter echoed through the connecting door. The sound brought tears to Evelyn's eyes. Her daughter hadn't laughed since her father died. They gathered in Thornton's study after dinner. The room held more books than Evelyn had ever seen outside a library. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. Thornton sat behind a massive oak desk. "Before I explain anything," he began, "I need to know about your education." The question surprised her. "Why does that matter?" "Answer, please." Evelyn hesitated. Most people didn't expect education from someone in her circumstances. "My father taught me to read and write, mathematics, some history." "Just your father?" "He was educated before the war, believed knowledge was the only thing no one could steal." Thornton nodded slowly. "Good. You'll need those skills." He opened a leather folder and removed a thick document. The pages were covered in elegant handwriting. Legal seals marked several sections. "This is my Aunt Cordelia's will," he said. "She died 6 months ago. Left me her entire fortune with one condition." Evelyn waited. The only sound was Lila playing with wooden blocks on the rug. "I must provide sanctuary to a woman with child in desperate need. Shelter, food, protection, for exactly 1 year. That's a strange condition. Aunt Cordelia had strong opinions about helping others. The inheritance includes $50,000 in cash, plus additional ranch lands worth another $30,000. Evelyn's breath caught. $80,000 was more money than she could imagine. "What happens if you don't fulfill the condition?" "Everything goes to charity. I lose the ranch." The pieces began forming a picture in her mind. "You need us to stay here for a year. I need you to help me save everything my family built." Thornton leaned forward. "In exchange, I'll split the inheritance. 70% for me, 30% for you." $24,000. Enough to buy land, start a business, secure Lila's future. Evelyn's hands trembled. "There are conditions," Thornton continued. "You'll manage household operations, oversee the domestic staff, help with ranch finances, prove you belong here. And after the year, you'll be wealthy enough to go anywhere, do anything." Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. The study door burst open without a knock. A man filled the doorway, nearly as tall as Thornton but broader through the chest. His clothes were dusty from hard riding. His face held barely controlled anger. "Judson," Thornton said calmly, "you're back early. I heard about your new house guests." Judson's eyes swept over Evelyn with obvious hostility. "What game are you playing, Caleb?" "Fulfilling Aunt Cordelia's wishes." "Her wishes were nonsense. That money should come to family." "The will is clear." Judson stepped closer to the desk. "I've worked this ranch for 15 years, bled for it, sweated for it. Now you're giving my inheritance to strangers?" "It was never your inheritance, Judson." "We'll see about that." Judson's gaze fixed on Evelyn again. "I know what you're thinking, woman. Don't get comfortable. This arrangement won't last." He stormed from the room. His boots thundered up the stairs. "My half-brother," Thornton explained quietly. "He expected to inherit everything." "Will he cause problems?" "Judson causes problems wherever he goes." "But he's family. I won't throw him out." Mrs. Garrett appeared in the doorway. "Perhaps we should show Mrs. Moreau the household accounts now." Thornton handed Evelyn a thick ledger book. The pages showed months of entries for supplies, wages, and expenses. The handwriting was barely legible. Evelyn studied the numbers for several minutes. Her father's training served her well. "These accounts are a mess. Can you fix them?" "I can do better than that. I can save you money." Thornton smiled for the first time since they'd met. "Then we have a deal, Mrs. Moreau." 3 weeks at Thornton Ranch transformed everything. Evelyn reorganized the household accounts with mathematical precision. She discovered the previous bookkeeper had been overcharging for supplies by nearly 40%. Her changes would save the ranch over $3,000 annually. The cowboys initially viewed her with suspicion. A woman handling their pay records seemed unnatural, but when she caught calculation errors that had shortchanged several men, their attitudes shifted. Respect replaced skepticism. Caleb found her in the study each morning, bent over ledger books with intense concentration. Her handwriting was cleaner than most educated men's. Her mathematical skills surpassed those of the town banker. "Where did you really learn all this?" he asked one morning. Evelyn looked up from a column of figures. My father wasn't just educated. He was brilliant. Harvard trained before the war changed everything. What happened to him? He fell in love with my mother. Her family didn't approve of the match. His family disowned him completely. She returned to her calculations. He taught me everything he knew. Said knowledge was the only inheritance that couldn't be stolen. Caleb understood the weight of family disappointment. His own father had died disapproving of Caleb's choices. Some wounds never fully healed. Lila blossomed in the ranch environment. She helped Mrs. Garrett in the kitchen, learning to bake bread and churn butter. The cowboys taught her to identify different horse breeds. Her laughter filled rooms that had been silent for years. "She's good for this place," Mrs. Garrett told Evelyn. "Brings life back to these old walls." "She's never been this happy." "Neither have you." Evelyn paused in folding laundry. Was her contentment so obvious? For the first time since her husband's death, she felt secure, useful, valued for her mind rather than pitied for her circumstances. The ranch hands requested reading lessons. Evelyn set up a makeshift school in the barn each evening. She taught letters and numbers to grown men who had never held pencils. Word spread to neighboring spreads. Soon, children from nearby farms arrived for afternoon lessons. Their parents offered payment in eggs, vegetables, and handmade goods. Evelyn accepted nothing but gratitude. "You're building something important here," Caleb observed, watching her teach a group of mixed-age students. "Everyone deserves to read." Not everyone agrees with that philosophy. He was right. Some townspeople grumbled about the ranch school. They claimed educating certain people led to dangerous ideas. Caleb ignored their complaints. Clayton Burke arrived on a Tuesday morning with 3 riders. The neighboring rancher owned almost as much land as the Thorntons. His political connections reached all the way to the territorial capital. "Heard you've been making changes, Caleb," Burke said from his saddle. "Always improving things. Seems like you came into some good fortune recently. New buildings, expanded herds, fancy household help." Caleb's expression remained neutral. Ranch business is good. Funny thing about good fortune. Sometimes it raises questions about where the money came from. "Are you asking me a direct question, Clayton?" Burke smiled without warmth. "Just making conversation among neighbors. Good day, Caleb." After Burke rode away, Mrs. Garrett found Caleb in the study. Her face showed concern. "That man's trouble," she said. "He's fishing for information. He won't stop fishing until he gets what he wants. Clayton Burke doesn't like seeing others prosper." Caleb knew she was right. Burke had always resented the Thornton family's success. The inheritance would make Caleb one of the wealthiest men in the territory. Such prosperity attracted dangerous attention. Judson's drinking increased with each passing week. He stumbled through his duties as foreman, barking orders at cowboys who knew their jobs better than he did. His resentment toward Evelyn grew more obvious daily. "She's playing you for a fool," he told Caleb after dinner one evening. "Evelyn has improved every aspect of ranch operations. She's after your money. Can't you see that? The arrangement benefits everyone involved. Family should benefit family, not outsiders." Caleb studied his half-brother's flushed face. "When have you ever acted like family, Judson? You've done nothing but drink and complain for years." Judson's hand moved toward his gun belt. Then he seemed to remember where he was. "This isn't over, brother." That night, Evelyn found Caleb on the front porch. He sat in a rocking chair, staring at stars scattered across the Wyoming sky. The evening air carried the scent of sage and distant rain. "Trouble with your brother?" "Judson makes his own trouble." Caleb gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Sit. Tell me about your husband." Evelyn settled into the chair carefully. "Thomas was a good man. Worked hard, loved Lila completely, but he had weaknesses. Gambling. Cards, dice, horse races. He always believed the next bet would solve our problems. Instead, it created bigger ones. The debts consumed everything. After he died, the collectors came for the farm." She rocked slowly in the evening breeze. "I thought we'd lost everything. Turns out we just hadn't found our real home yet." Caleb turned to look at her. "Is that what this is?" Home? The question hung between them like a bridge neither was ready to cross. Evelyn felt the weight of unspoken possibilities. 6 more months remained on their agreement. After that, decisions would need to be made. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said softly. A rider approached from the direction of town. His horse moved at urgent speed despite the darkness. As he drew closer, Caleb recognized one of Burke's men. "Mr. Thornton," the rider called. "Mr. Burke sent me to deliver a message. He's filed papers with the territorial court. Says he has questions about your recent inheritance." The territorial courthouse in Cheyenne buzzed with legal activity. Judge Harrison's chambers smelled of tobacco and old leather. Clayton Burke sat confidently beside his attorney, a thin man with calculating eyes. Caleb entered with Evelyn and their lawyer from Denver. The legal fees were already mounting, eating into ranch profits. Burke's challenge threatened everything they had built. "Mr. Burke claims the inheritance conditions are fraudulent," Judge Harrison began. "He alleges this arrangement is a business transaction disguised as charity." Burke's attorney stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Thornton has clearly manufactured this situation to circumvent the will's true intent." This woman appeared conveniently just as the inheritance deadline approached. "The will's language is specific," Caleb's lawyer countered. "My client has fulfilled every requirement exactly as written." Judge Harrison studied the will documents. "The court needs proof this arrangement represents genuine sanctuary, not a business scheme. Mrs. Moreau, what is your understanding of this situation?" Evelyn stood carefully, every eye in the room focused on her. "I needed help. Mr. Thornton provided it. Nothing was planned or arranged. Yet you receive substantial compensation. I work for everything I receive. The ranch accounts, household management, educational services for the community." Burke leaned forward. "Educational services? Teaching people to read gives them dangerous ideas. Leads to unrest." "Knowledge leads to progress," Evelyn replied firmly. "Something this territory desperately needs." Judge Harrison made notes in his ledger. "I'm ordering a 30-day investigation period. Court officials will visit the ranch to observe this arrangement firsthand. If fraud is discovered, the inheritance becomes void." Outside the courthouse, Burke approached Caleb directly. "You're making a mistake, Thornton. That woman will destroy everything your family built." "My family built prosperity through hard work and fair treatment. Evelyn represents those same values. She represents change, and change threatens the natural order of things." The ride back to the ranch stretched long and silent. Evelyn stared at the passing landscape, wondering if she had doomed their chances. Her defense had been honest, but perhaps too passionate. "Did I say too much in there?" she asked finally. "You said exactly what needed saying." Burke seemed confident. Clayton Burke has never been right about anything important. Back at the ranch, news of the legal challenge spread quickly. Some ranch hands worried about their jobs. Others rallied around Evelyn, grateful for the education she provided their children. Mrs. Garrett pulled Evelyn aside in the kitchen. "There's something you should know about Miss Cordelia's will." "What kind of something?" The older woman glanced around nervously. "She left specific instructions about the type of woman Caleb should help. Very specific." "What do you mean?" "A woman with child, educated but struggling, strong moral character." Mrs. Garrett paused. "And one more thing. A woman whose father might have been lost to the family years ago." Evelyn's breath caught. "Lost how?" "Miss Cordelia had a son who disappeared before the war, ran off with a woman his parents didn't approve of. She spent decades wondering what happened to him." The implications struck Evelyn like physical blows. Her father's mysterious past, his Harvard education, his family's disownment. The pieces formed a terrifying picture. "You think I might be related to the Thorntons?" "I think Miss Cordelia suspected it was possible. She made me promise to watch for signs." That evening, Lila developed a fever. The illness came suddenly, transforming her from laughing child to burning, delirious patient within hours. Dr. Manning rode out from town in the middle of the night. Pneumonia, he diagnosed grimly. Touch and go for the next few days. Evelyn never left her daughter's bedside. She bathed the fever-hot skin with cool cloths, spooned medicine between cracked lips, whispered prayers into the darkness. Caleb brought food she couldn't eat and coffee that grew cold. "She's strong," he said during the worst night. "Stronger than you know. I can't lose her. She's all I have left. You have more than that now." Evelyn looked up from Lila's pale face. Caleb's expression held something deeper than friendship or business partnership. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. "Don't say things you don't mean." "I've never meant anything more." Judson chose that moment to stumble into the room, reeking of whiskey. His eyes were bloodshot, his movements unsteady. "Touching scene," he slurred. "Playing house while the family fortune slips away." "Get out," Caleb ordered quietly. "This is still my home too, brother. At least until your little scheme collapses." "Lila is sick. Show some respect." "Respect? For what? A con woman and her bastard child?" Caleb stood so quickly his chair toppled backward. "One more word and you're off this ranch permanently." Judson swayed but held his ground. "You think I don't know what's really happening here? Burke offered me money for information about your arrangement. Good money." The admission hung in the air like poison. Evelyn felt her world tilting sideways. Judson had been feeding information to their enemy. "How much did you tell him?" Caleb asked dangerously. Everything he wanted to know. Financial records, her teaching activities. "How cozy you two have gotten." Judson smiled uglily. "Burke knows exactly how to destroy your little fantasy. You betrayed your own family. You betrayed it first by bringing them here." Caleb took a step toward his brother. Judson's hand moved instinctively toward his gun. The tension stretched taut between them. Lila stirred on the bed, whimpering softly. The sound broke the spell of violence building in the room. Both men stepped back. "Leave," Caleb said. "Pack your things and leave tonight. You can't throw me out. I have rights here." "You have no rights. You forfeited them when you sided with Burke." Judson's face crumpled slightly. For a moment, he looked less like a dangerous drunk and more like a lost, bitter man. "This used to be home. It could have stayed home. You chose differently." After Judson left, Evelyn and Caleb sat in silence beside Lila's bed. The child's breathing had eased slightly. Her fever seemed to be breaking. "We might lose everything," Evelyn said quietly. "We might. Are you prepared for that?" She considered the question honestly. 6 months ago, I had nothing. If we lose, I'll still have more than I started with." "What's that?" "Hope, purpose, the knowledge that I belonged somewhere, even if only for a while." Caleb reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. "You belong here permanently if you want it." The territorial courthouse was packed for the final hearing. Judge Harrison's gavel commanded silence as lawyers shuffled papers and spectators whispered among themselves. Burke sat smugly beside his attorney, confident of victory. Caleb and Evelyn took their seats at the defendant's table. Lila had recovered from her pneumonia, but remained pale and fragile. The stress of the legal battle had taken its toll on all of them. "This court will now hear final arguments regarding the Cordelia Thornton inheritance," Judge Harrison announced. Burke's attorney stood first. "Your Honor, our investigation has revealed a clear pattern of deception. Mrs. Moreau appeared at precisely the right moment with exactly the right circumstances. This cannot be coincidence." He presented a timeline showing Evelyn's arrival just months before the inheritance deadline. Bank records demonstrated Caleb's improved financial position. Witness statements described the businesslike efficiency of their arrangement. Furthermore, the attorney continued, Mrs. Moreau has exceeded the bounds of simple sanctuary. She operates a school, manages ranch finances, and lives as mistress of the household. This is employment, not charity." Judge Harrison nodded grimly. The evidence painted a damning picture of calculated fraud. Caleb's lawyer rose for the defense. My client has fulfilled every letter of Miss Cordelia's will. The document requires sanctuary for 1 year. Nothing prohibits beneficial work arrangements. The defense felt weak against Burke's methodical attack. Evelyn watched their carefully built life crumbling in real time. The ranch, the school, their future together hung by threads. Judge Harrison called for a brief recess. In the hallway, Evelyn made a decision that surprised everyone. "I'm going to leave," she told Caleb quietly. "What are you talking about?" "If I disappear, Burke's case falls apart. You keep the inheritance and the ranch." "Absolutely not. Think practically. You'll be wealthy. I'll take Lila somewhere far away. We both survive." Caleb gripped her shoulders gently. "We face this together or not at all." Before she could argue, a commotion erupted near the courthouse entrance. Judson stumbled through the doors, clearly intoxicated despite the early hour. His clothes were rumpled, his face unshaven. "Where's my brother?" he demanded loudly. "Got something important to say." Burke's face darkened as Judson approached their group. "You weren't supposed to come here. Changed my mind about our deal, Clayton. Family's family, even when they're fools." Judge Harrison called everyone back into session. Judson insisted on addressing the court despite his condition. The judge reluctantly allowed it. "Your Honor," Judson slurred slightly, "I got things to confess. Mr. Burke paid me to spy on my brother's household. Paid good money for information." Burke's attorney objected frantically. "This man is clearly intoxicated. His testimony should be inadmissible." "Let him speak," Judge Harrison ordered. Judson swayed but continued. "Burke wanted dirt on Mrs. Moreau, wanted to prove the whole thing was fake. But I lived in that house for months, watched her work, watched her care for that little girl." He turned toward Evelyn with bloodshot eyes. "She saved that ranch, Your Honor. Made it better than it ever was. My brother found something real, and I tried to destroy it out of jealousy." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Burke stood angrily. "Your Honor, this is clearly a desperate ploy by the defense." Judge Harrison pounded his gavel for order. In the sudden silence, Mrs. Garrett rose from the gallery. Her weathered hands clutched a leather envelope. "Your Honor, may I approach? I have documents that might shed light on this matter." The judge beckoned her forward. Mrs. Garrett's voice trembled as she spoke. "Miss Cordelia left specific instructions. If questions ever arose about her will, I was to present this sealed letter. She made me swear to keep it secret unless absolutely necessary." Burke's confidence faltered visibly. His attorney tried to object, but Judge Harrison was already opening the envelope. The courtroom held its breath as the judge read silently. His eyebrows rose with each paragraph. Finally, he looked up with an expression of amazement. "This letter contains remarkable information about Miss Cordelia's true intentions." He cleared his throat before reading aloud. "To whom it may concern, if this letter is being read in court, it means someone has challenged my will's conditions. Let me state clearly that I designed these requirements to locate my lost family." Evelyn's heart stopped beating. Mrs. Garrett's earlier hints suddenly made terrible sense. Judge Harrison continued reading. "My beloved son, Thomas, disappeared 30 years ago after falling in love with a woman my husband and I foolishly rejected. I spent decades searching for him and any children he might have had." The words hit Evelyn like physical blows. Her father's name was Thomas. Her father had attended Harvard. Her father had been disowned by his family for marrying her mother. "I suspected that Evelyn Moreau might be my granddaughter based on her father's description and her own remarkable education. If DNA testing proves this connection, she is my rightful heir, not the beneficiary of charity." The courtroom exploded in chaos. Burke jumped to his feet, his face purple with rage. "This is impossible. There's no proof of any blood relationship." Judge Harrison studied additional documents from the envelope. Miss Cordelia anticipated this objection. She arranged for her personal physician to take blood samples before her death. Comparison testing can be performed immediately. Evelyn felt the world spinning around her. She wasn't just fulfilling the will's conditions. She was Cordelia's granddaughter. The inheritance belonged to her by birth, not by charity. Furthermore, the judge continued, this letter explicitly states that Mr. Caleb Thornton was chosen as trustee to help reunite the family. His role was to provide sanctuary until the truth could be revealed. Burke's attorney whispered frantically in his client's ear. Their entire case had collapsed in minutes. Dr. Manning stepped forward from the gallery. Your Honor, I performed the blood tests Miss Cordelia requested. The results confirmed genetic relationship between the deceased and Mrs. Moreau. Judge Harrison set down the letter with finality. This court finds that Evelyn Moreau is the rightful heir to the Cordelia Thornton estate. Mr. Burke's challenge is dismissed with prejudice. Evelyn sat in stunned silence as the gavel fell. She had found her family, her inheritance, and her home all at once. The courthouse steps buzzed with activity as news of the verdict spread. Evelyn sat on the stone steps, still processing the revelation that had changed everything. She was no longer a desperate widow seeking charity. She was Cordelia Thornton's granddaughter and rightful heir to one of the territory's largest fortunes. Clayton Burke stormed past without acknowledgement, his face twisted with defeat. His attorney followed, muttering about appeals and procedural errors. Their threats rang hollow after such a complete legal collapse. Caleb found Evelyn sitting alone while Lila played nearby with Mrs. Garrett. He settled beside her on the steps, careful not to crowd her space. How do you feel about suddenly being wealthy? Evelyn stared at her hands. I don't feel wealthy. I feel lost. The money doesn't change who you are, doesn't it? Yesterday I was your employee. Today I'm your business partner. Tomorrow I could buy 10 ranches like yours. Caleb understood her confusion. Sudden wealth could isolate as easily as poverty. What do you want to do with it? I want to split everything equally with you, 50-50. That's not necessary. The inheritance is yours by blood. Evelyn turned to face him directly. Cordelia designed this whole situation to bring us together. She made you the trustee for a reason. This was never about charity or business arrangements. She was right. Cordelia had orchestrated their meeting with the precision of a master strategist. Every element had been calculated to unite her lost family with someone who could protect and guide them. She wanted us to be partners, Evelyn continued, real partners, in everything. The implication hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. 6 months of growing feelings suddenly had legal and financial foundation. Judson approached hesitantly, his earlier drunkenness replaced by sober shame. He stopped several feet away, unsure of his reception. Evelyn, I owe you an apology. What I did was unforgivable. You told the truth when it mattered most. Only because I realized I was destroying the only real family I had left. He looked at Caleb with genuine remorse. Burke offered me money, and I thought I deserved it more than strangers. I was wrong about everything. Caleb studied his half-brother's face. The bitterness had been replaced by something resembling humility. Are you sober? 3 days now. Plan to stay that way. The ranch needs a good foreman, someone who knows the land and respects the people working it. Judson's eyes widened with surprise. You're offering me my job back? I'm offering you a chance to be family again. The ride back to the ranch felt different than their previous journeys. Evelyn no longer traveled as a dependent seeking shelter. She rode as an equal partner returning to her rightful inheritance. Mrs. Garrett had prepared a celebration dinner with the finest china and crystal. The dining room glowed with candles and polished silver. Ranch hands cleaned up and joined the family table for the first time in the house's history. Miss Cordelia would be so proud, Mrs. Garrett said, raising her glass. She always believed family could overcome any obstacle. Evelyn thought about the grandmother she had never met, a woman who spent decades searching for lost family, never giving up hope of reunion. The inheritance was just money. The real gift was belonging. That evening, Caleb found Evelyn on the front porch, rocking slowly in Cordelia's favorite chair. The Wyoming stars scattered diamonds across the dark sky. Regrets about any of this? Only one. Evelyn stopped rocking. I wish I could have met her, thanked her for bringing us together. You can still thank her. Build the life she wanted you to have. Evelyn turned to study his profile in the starlight. Is that a proposal, Mr. Thornton? It's whatever you want it to be, Miss Moreau. I want it to be a proposal, and I want my answer to be yes. 6 months later, the small church in Copper Ridge overflowed with wedding guests. Ranch families sat beside town merchants. Former students shared pews with territorial officials. The diversity reflected the community Evelyn and Caleb had built together. Lila served as maid of honor, beaming in her new dress. She had grown 3 inches and gained 20 pounds since that stormy night at the saloon. Her laughter filled every corner of their life. Judge Harrison performed the ceremony, still amazed by the case that had brought them together. By the power vested in me by Wyoming Territory, I pronounce you husband and wife. The celebration continued at the ranch with music, dancing, and enough food to feed half the county. Mrs. Garrett supervised everything with military precision, tears of joy streaming down her weathered cheeks. 2 years passed in a blur of prosperity and growth. The ranch expanded to include 3 neighboring spreads. Evelyn's school system stretched across 5 counties, educating hundreds of children regardless of their family's circumstances. Their son Thomas arrived during a spring snowstorm, named for both grandfathers who had shaped their destinies. Lila took to big sister duties with enthusiasm, teaching him songs and reading stories aloud. Judson had remained sober and proven himself an excellent foreman. His bitterness had transformed into protective loyalty toward the family that had given him a second chance. On a golden autumn evening, Evelyn stood in her classroom doorway watching Caleb and Lila harvest vegetables in the garden. Baby Thomas slept peacefully in her arms. The sight filled her with contentment beyond measure. Mrs. Garrett approached, carrying fresh apple cider. Thinking about that stormy night again? Every day. Sometimes the greatest disasters lead to the greatest blessings. Miss Cordelia always said family finds a way to come home. Evelyn looked across the land that had become her legacy and her future. The desperate woman who had begged for one night's shelter had found her permanent place in the world. The inheritance had given them security, but love had given them everything that truly mattered. The stars emerged as twilight deepened, the same stars that had witnessed their first conversation on this porch. Tonight, they shone down on a family that had grown from a business arrangement into an unbreakable bond built on trust, respect, and unwavering commitment to each other's dreams.